If at any point you want to go back to the default settings, you can right click either on the value or next to it on the name, and it will reset all three values, so X, Y, and Z. So let's right click on translate and then revert to defaults. I can also select my box now and change the primitive type to polygon mesh. And as you can see, I can change the size, the center of rotation, uniform scale, and also divisions. So I will change the subdivisions to 2 in each axis. And now you can see that our object, our box 1, is visible in the viewport. However, other boxes are transparent. You can change how they look in here. So if you click on the middle icon, you can choose whether you want to see all objects or you want to ghost them, or maybe you want to hide them completely. Okay, so now to create our brick wall, let me zoom out, so middle mouse button. Then I'll go to the tab menu and type grid. And in the grid, you can see that I only see the outline of the grid because we only can have one node displayed. Okay, so let me display the transform node, but I will select the grid so that I can see the outline. And I can change settings here as well. So I will change the orientation to X, Y. And now again, I will create a transform node. So I can just type transform and click enter on the keyboard. It will automatically add it to my network, so connected to the grid. And let me display the transform node. So I want this grid to be aligned with the ground plane. And I can do that by either moving my grid up, but then if I change the size, it will change as well. Or I can use expressions. So this is another way of editing things in Houdini. You can use either Python or you can use Vex expressions. So I will use a very simple expression here. In the translate Y value, I will type minus $y min. And then press enter. And now you can see it moved it to the minimum point in Y axis. I can also go to pivot transform options. So whenever you see this little plus, you can click on it and you will expand. We will see more options over here. And I will type the same thing in pivot translate Y value, this time without minus at the beginning. So now if I change the uniform scale, you can see that this grid just stays on the ground. So by using the expression, I just changed this value to chop, so channels. And in Houdini, you'll often find these strange words such as sops, dops, chops, or vops. Many people refer to this as a secret language of Houdini. However, this is something we'll use quite often. And let me explain what they are and why they are named this way. In Houdini, you can find a lot of different nodes. You could see some of them in the tab menu. And as you already saw, there are different nodes available in the object level and in our geometries, which is called a sublevel. And this is because these nodes are divided into smaller groups. So we can distinguish, for example, nodes used for creating geometries, for editing motion, for creating dynamic simulations, for compositing, and for rendering. And in older versions of Houdini, nodes used to be called operators. And this is where sops, chops, dops, cops, drops, and so on come from. So surface operators are called sops, channel operators are called chops, dynamic operators are called dops, and so on and so forth. So at the moment, we are working in the sub level. So everything we're creating here are subs. All right, so we have the grid, we have the brick. Now let's create points on the grid using points from volume. And make sure to display them to scatter points on this grid. Then we'll copy box to each one of these points. And we have definitely too many points, so I'll just increase the point separation, so the distance between them. Let's now create something called copy to points. And you can see that some nodes have more than one input. So far, we only had one input, one output. However, some nodes have 2, 3, 4, or maybe even more. So if you zoom in and hover over the input, you will usually see the description of what is required. So in here, let me move it so that we can see it better. Required is geometry to copy, and the second one is target points to copy to. So let's connect the geometry to the first input and the points to the second input. Now I can display the copy to points and I can see the boxes and the points in the same network. However, the boxes are intersecting. So a simple trick I will do here is link several parameters so that the boxes are exactly to the size we want them to be. So let me go to the box transform, and I want to find the parameter that is responsible for the scale of the boxes. So it will be this one over here. So this is transform node and uniform scale. Now I want to right click on this value and click on copy parameter. Now I will go to points from volume, find point separation, right click and paste relative reference. And this is a very important thing, you will do it very often. So now you can see that this value turned green, and we also have some path over here. So this is the path where it's linked to. Now we can go to our transform node. And when we change the uniform scale to, let's say, 0.8, you can see in the points from volume, if I click on point separation, so I can switch between the path and the value, it changed to 0.8 as well. So let me go back to transform again. Let's change that to 0.4 and let's see again. Here we go. So now these two values are linked. So whatever I type in the transform node will be copied to the points from volume point separation. As I mentioned earlier, there are several ways of creating things in Houdini. So I can use the shelf tools, I can create nodes and connect them in the network, or I can use Python or Vex to create things. So let's see how that works. So after the points from volume, I want to add color to my points so that they transfer the color to each one of these boxes. So I will select this line over here, or just simply click on it, then click tab, and I want to type randomize and find attribute randomize. And now you can see it connected to this line in between points from volume and copy to points. And by default, you can see that it randomized the color of the bricks. And if I scroll down, so here are the options in attribute randomize. When I scroll down, we have 3 values over here. Okay, so we're using 3 dimensions. So we're using these 3 values, so R, G, and B. And I can adjust these values here to change the color. So I want to have, for example, more red, less green, and less blue. But what I can also do is do the same thing using Vex. So let me go to the tab menu again and find something called attribute wrangle. I'll just place it next to my attribute randomize. And here you can see we do not have many options. We just have the expression box. And in here we can type our expressions. So now let me disconnect this attribute randomize, and I can do that by just shaking it to the sides and then plug in attribute wrangle. So just hover over the line and you can see that it snaps, it just connects automatically. And what I will do here is I will ask Houdini to use the color attribute. So @cd space equals space. And I want to use a random point number. So I want to use a random color for each point. So each box will have random color as well. So let me type it. Don't worry if you don't understand what it does just yet. Okay, here we go. So now you can see it did exactly the same thing.